Welcome back to Art Discourse, a show where Kyle and I look at questions that have been sent in by you, the public, and we respond to them to the best of our abilities in this moment. Today we're going to answer this question. Here, Kyle.
Today's question will be, how do you pick the right gallery or people to work with when applying to shows or showing your work?
Hello, it's me again. I'm calling from a faraway land. Pick up the phone. I'm calling from a different time zone. Heard you are a pretty good source for major topics in art discourse. Hello, I'll leave my questions as a message at the dial tone.
I think when you are sussing out this question, how do you pick the right gallery? So I would choose a gallery that shares or shows work that is similar to my own and is kind of aligned with what I want to make. It seems like a no-brainer. If you're looking for those kinds of things, you can look at other people's CVs. If you admire an artist, you can look at their CV and see where they're represented or where they have shown, and you can kind of reverse engineer what they've applied for. And so you can kind of find the right gallery for you by kind of looking at the CVs of people that you really admire.
Yeah. Well, I guess the reality is there's going to be times when you say yes to something and the working experience isn't going to be very enjoyable. And sometimes you have to weigh things out. There might be aspects of a place that is not fun for you. It has nothing to do with the place not being fun. For example, I had a really great opportunity early on to do a project with the Gladstone for Come Up to My Room, and sometimes we needed to get up really, really early if we wanted to really commit to the project, because they had lots of press coming and TV and all sorts of things, and sometimes the days were insanely long. We were, there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, which means we needed to get up at about 3, and then there would be a party going on until 1 o'clock in the morning, so there wasn't a lot of sleeping. And that wasn't an ideal situation for me. I didn't love that, but the experience was worth it, and the connections that I made was worth it, and working in that space was really fun and enjoyable. So you have to kind of balance out, what are you doing, and is the opportunity worth maybe parts of it that you aren't gonna completely love 100%.
Working with the right people, I think, can be a trial and error thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get a pretty good idea when you're starting to work with somebody whether or not that relationship's going to work out. Sometimes you say yes to something and you find yourself in a poor position, and I think that you have to navigate how to exit that position in a tactful way.
Yeah, I think you also have to be pretty self-aware of elements that are really important to you. If you have a tendency to put projects off until really late in the game, and that rush of adrenaline is what helps drive you to work, then somebody who's really time management and scheduled might be someone that is more challenging for you to work with, or vice versa. If you're very time management and scheduled and you're working with someone who's not like that, that could be really difficult. And so you have to know for yourself, how do I like to work? What's really valuable to me? And maybe list that out so that you have a good understanding of your work rhythms and structure to working, so that you can.
That reminds me of the project that we were doing with Neven Lockheed. To premise this, we were beginning to work in group projects, and we were kind of trying to find alternative ways of kind of working with one another. Mm-hmm. One of the opening kind of icebreaker exercises was to individually plot out on a graph. You draw a cross on it, and in the top left you put in what are the things that you want to attract in a group activity, mm-hmm. and what things are you looking for and want, and how do you want that to be? How do you want a group activity to feel? What kind of words would you say are associated with that? And you write all that stuff in that quadrant, and then the next quadrant was things that you want to repel. So things that you don't like. So you could put words in I don't like to work with arrogant people, or I don't want the work to be boring. I don't want it to be sad. I don't want it to be exclusionary. Write all that stuff there. And then in the third quadrant there was what was it? It was your energy.
There was
energy, describe it.
Yeah.
Describe the energy of the group and how the group would interact with the world. And so you'd write a sentence about that or a couple words. And then the last quadrant was about impossibilities. So you write everything that is like, you absolutely cannot work with this.
I guess like when we were doing it, we were thinking of impossibility as like things we felt were impossible to achieve, and looking at that in contrast to maybe what we wanted to attract. So yeah.
I read the exercise as being an exercise about group dynamics, and so impossible within group dynamics in that relationship, and so things that you just wouldn't do, and you would compare with one another in the group this thing, and you would find similarities, and you would talk about those things, and each one of you would go through your list and kind of describe how you want to interact with the group. It was a really interesting exercise because it was a great way to talk about how you feel your strengths are and your weaknesses are, and how you want to engage in a group activity, and then to look at how they want to engage and what they want to get from it and what kind of like energy they're putting into the world. And you can see like most of the time you're like pretty close, you're like similar, but then there's like those other things that you're like, oh, that's clearly going to cause tension, or that comment that you made is going to like cause some friction. So you can be aware of those things. And so when you're trying to find a good group to work with, it's important to have good, strong communication skills.
Yeah, I think like the other thing that does is it builds like a group norm. So you're almost making like a set of bylaws for your group to say, this is how we are going to engage with one another. And you can do that with a gallery too. I think ultimately what it comes down to is what you said, it's communication. The more communication and the more structure and understanding that's there on both sides, I think the better a working relationship is. So for me, this question is like, seek out galleries that you feel excited about and are really interested in working with, and people that you're really interested in working with, but also go into those working relationships with a really clear set of boundaries and goals and norms that work for both sides. So, there's going to be some aspects that you might have to compromise on for yourself, because it can't be just you being happy. No. Both sides need to be happy. So, you have what things are really, really important to you and what things are ideal, but if they can't be met, then that's okay. We've been very fortunate with the groups that we've worked with, and I think that part of that is that everyone that we've worked with has kind of communication at the core of how they build a working relationship.
Yeah, I'd say the relationships or the projects that have been most successful in that regard have been the ones with the strongest communication skills. Yeah.
In terms of like finding those spaces and finding people, I mean, the obvious one is go to galleries, go to museums, engage in public events, talk to the artists that you would like to collaborate with, ask questions about, are they open to that, are they accepting new work, all that kind of information. And then also, there's lots of like art fairs. There's the Toronto Art Fair. I mean, obviously not right now, but they also release publications, and you can get those publications, and all the participating galleries from like internationally participating galleries will be listed in those publications, and you can review those and, find places that you might not be able to actually visit listed in those, and seek them out and find out what their submissions, what their submission calls are and how they go about bringing artists on board.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is like, you're definitely going to have to put the work in first.
Yeah.
A gallery's not just going to come and swoop you out of the streets and take you to wherever they take you. But like, you're going to have to like put effort in to make those cold calls and those emails and those little packages, and then try to reach out to them. And I think that when you do those things and you do send that initial email that really awkward, you probably wrote it too many times, and that response back that they give will be really telling of what kind of like future relationship you might have with them. And don't get hung up on like a lukewarm relationship with a gallery. That's kind of cool, I think. Like, if the gallery's tough to work with, like, don't put yourself in that position to work with them. If it's just not worth the headaches. Chrissy might argue otherwise.
I don't know. I think you have to like choose the battles you feel are worth fighting. And if it's like,
fair enough.
I mean, like, let's say for example, I don't know anything about like the Guggenheim, but like, let's say they're not the best to work with. If I got offered a show there, would I say no? Probably not. Okay,
so into the formula, we're gonna squeeze like prestige, and if the prestige is greater than the hardships that are endured, apply to the gallery.
I mean, that has to be your own personal, personal value structure, what is important to you.
I think trust your intuition.
Yeah.
You'll know if you want to work with them or not.
And if something didn't go well, because I think this is a tendency for most humans, is to blame other people, I would say, like, really sit back and assess what happened and the role you played in that experience, and use that as like an extra little, like, structuring of your foundation moving forward. So don't just say, oh, that sucked, those people were terrible, I don't like them, I'll never work like that again. Use that as a learning experience that you can bring moving forward. Maybe you weren't answering emails quick enough and that was frustrating someone else, or who knows, I don't know. Whatever the situation might be, take into consideration the fact that you were also part of the team. What was your role in that team? Maybe the role you were playing in that team wasn't the right role for you, and that was what made the situation uncomfortable or dissatisfying. And next time, make sure that you take a different role that's going to be better suited for what you actually want to get excited and do.
Some of the right people to work with are the ones that have strong conflict resolution skills and are able to talk about those things in a reasonable way and discuss and resolve and compromise and go about it in like a polite manner. Mm-hmm. And maybe not a passive aggressive manner. Definitely not an aggressive manner.
Yeah, those are our thoughts on finding galleries and people that are going to be...
Finding the right gallery and working with the right people.
Yeah. If you have more thoughts, or if you want to expand or even elaborate or challenge some of the ideas that we just discussed, feel free. Discussions are always welcome and greatly appreciated in the comments below.
All right, everybody.
Thanks for
joining us. Talk to you later.
If you enjoyed this video, could you do two things for me? Could you like it? And could you subscribe to our channel? Both of these things help us out tremendously. A big shout out to all of our patrons. Your continued support is amazing, and we really appreciate the encouragement to continue making these videos. If you want to become a patron, you can see the link below in the description.
Source for major topics in art discourse. I'll leave my questions